Welcome to Can You Hold My Attention? Kingswood U.S. CEO and industry veteran Derek Bruton invites his guests to discuss and debate the latest trends and hottest topics facing financial advisors today. The guest list represents a who's who of the financial services industry. Derek's goal is to provide you with insight into how he and other leaders think about today's challenges and plan for future success. And now, let's see whether or not today's guest can hold Derek's attention.
Hello, everyone. We've got a special show today, a different show for all of you. Our two guests, Chris Dudley and Detlef Schrempf, who played a combined 32 seasons in the NBA and who made the transition from entertaining people on the court to now working with families and individuals to preserve and grow their life savings. They're my two guests today, and I can't tell you how excited I am to have them on the show. We always hear in our business, in our industry, financial services, great, wonderful stories about people whose flight path to this industry didn't exactly go through the more traditional routes, like working at a wirehouse or an accounting firm, or maybe from the legal background. Instead, maybe wealth management was a second career for this advisor. And I've seen and worked with several of these second career advisors over time. They've all been really successful, and they bring a different perspective to wealth management. And these two guys on the show today came from way outside the wealth management industry, making the transition from professional sports, and have also found great success again in their lives, and they're making a difference in people's lives as well. So, and perhaps you're sitting there listening to this podcast and you have no interest in pro basketball or maybe professional sports at all, but I know you still value and understand the importance of teamwork, hard work, perseverance, and how success isn't necessarily defined by experience, but by the willingness to adapt and grow. And so there's a lot to learn from the lives of these two guys, even if you don't care about basketball. I personally care a lot about basketball because I grew up playing it as well. And I will say, starting out, to the best of my knowledge, there's no Oscars or Emmys for podcasts. I don't think there's any award shows out there yet right now. But if there were, this show would definitely win the award for the highest average height of the participants on this show. Between the three of us, we average 6'10". So eat your heart out, Joe Rogan. We definitely got you on that. And Dad, I think you're the shortest at 6'9", so you'd have to bring the ball up the court here as our only point guard. I don't think Chris and I ever handled the ball. I know I did. So let's start. Detlef Schrempf, Chris Dudley. Let's start with you, Chris. You're a senior vice president and a CFP at Congress Wealth Management, a $2 billion plus RIA based out of Boston. I know you split time between Oregon and California. A little bit of your career. You're drafted in 1987 in the NBA. You played 16 seasons, which is just unheard of these days, or even back then it was unheard of. I think the average tenure of an NBA player is around 5 years. So the fact that you played 16 is amazing. 886 games you played with the Cavs, the Nets, New Jersey Nets at the time, Trail Blazers, the Knicks. You went to the finals with the Knicks in 1999. You, like me, were a rebounder and a shot blocker. You averaged over 6 rebounds a game and over 1,000 block shots in your career. That's amazing. And I think it's cool that you played against and guarded some of the best centers of all time in the NBA. Guys like David Robinson, Shaquille O'Neal, and Hakeem Olajuwon. I know you practiced every day with Patrick Ewing, and I don't know, I think you overlap with Jabbar as well, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Amazing. You've transitioned to wealth management. We'll talk about that, but you've also done some wonderful things on the philanthropic side, as Dad has done. You started a foundation for bettering the lives of diabetic children. You run a basketball camp for children with diabetes, and you also found time to run for governor of Oregon in 2010. So that's pretty awesome. And we have a couple things in common too, Chris. I don't know if you know this. We both were recruited by, and I think we both applied for Yale, that's where the similarities stop. You got in, I didn't. So we're both centers. We banged around a lot. And you hail from, I think, San Diego. You went to Torrey Pines High School, where my daughters went to school, and they've produced some legendary sports heroes over time. Det, let me move to you. You're the Senior Director of Business Development at Coldstream Capital, which is a $4 billion RIA in Bellevue, Washington. You're born and raised in Germany, and but you went to high school and college in the state of Washington. You played for UW, I know that, and you were the 8th overall pick in the 1985 NBA draft, the first European player, born player, I should say, in the NBA, which is amazing when you think about nowadays. Every NBA roster has at least one European or foreign-born player, but you were the first in the NBA, which is pretty cool. You also played for 16 seasons with the Pacers, the Sonics, the Trailblazers. I think this is cool. You represented Germany in the Olympics, I think twice. In the 1992 Olympics, you played against the Dream Team, the famous USA Dream Team with the likes of Jordan and Stockton and Magic Johnson. You made it to the finals in '96 with the Seattle Supersonics. You're a 3-time All-Star, and you average 14 points a game. You also very philanthropic, working with the Detlef Schrempf Foundation. You started that for children's charities in the Pacific Northwest. And I think this one's cool. You're also a TV star, right, Def? Yeah, you didn't want me to bring that up, I know. But you were on Married with Children, Parks and Recreation, 30 Rock. So you've been on TV. I think you've been typecast for comedy shows, I guess. So action and adventure is out of the question. We won't see you doing any Predator movies or anything like that, it sounds like. And what we have in common, Det, is that we both played in the Pac-10, which is now called the Pac-12, as most people know. We both were on the court at the same time with this gentleman named Gary Payton. I played against him. You played with him. And I think if there was a stat of trash talking per minute in college and the NBA, I'm sure Gary would win hands down in that category. And your partner in business was my business partner and colleague 30 years ago, which is quite amazing how small this world is. So welcome, gentlemen. I know that was a long intro, but you guys deserve it. You've both achieved a lot in your sports careers, and now we're going to talk about wealth management as well.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start at the beginning and talk about how you got into basketball and then into pro sports. When I was a kid, I couldn't stand basketball. I got to be a freshman in high school, and at the age of 14, my 6'10" body was saying, dude, you might want to at least try this sport. And so at what age did you guys set your sights on becoming a competitive basketball player? And, when did you have dreams of, if you had dreams of getting into the NBA?
Oh, yeah. So I moved from Philadelphia to San Diego in 6th grade. I was a big 76er, big Dr. J fan. This was, about 77, I think I moved. And so I loved the sport. Wasn't great at it. I was a late bloomer. I was super skinny. I grew late, played JV sophomore year, actually junior year as well, and really bloomed. Senior, had a great breakout year, senior year, and then went on to play in college. So to answer your question, it was my dream. I didn't really share it, but my dream was to play in the NBA. And I did have the big setback. I talked about this a little bit with the foundation of getting type 1 diabetes when I was a sophomore in high school. So that was and there was nobody in the NBA with, I was the first player in the NBA with type 1 diabetes. So there was a lot of things kind of going against it, but secretly or whatever, I was driven to want to play, and I just loved the sport. And unlike, I was tall, but I wasn't excessively tall where it was like, you've got to play. I chose it first. And I think that's sometimes helpful when you're able to choose basketball versus it kind of getting pushed into it. So I absolutely love the sport, and it was my passion. That's
great. I mean, I didn't know that about diabetes, and that's I mean, among the many challenges of just getting into the NBA and the low percentages of people that actually make it to the NBA, throwing in yet another challenge that you face, that's pretty cool. Dad, you grew up in Germany, and I don't know how many kids in Germany dream of being in the NBA, but what was your experience like?
Started playing soccer like everyone in Europe, and definitely in Germany. As as soon as you can walk, you kick a soccer ball. So I didn't really get introduced to basketball until I was about 13 years old. I was fortunate that at that time I switched to a school, and my PE teacher was a guy that played with Bill Walton at UCLA. So in PE class, he started having us do basketball, and we are like, what the heck is this thing? Throwing a ball into this hoop up there. And and I started growing at that time. I was lanky, late bloomer, and I was hooked. Literally 6 months later, I joined a club team. I was on the third youth team. Within 2 months, I was starting on the first team, and 2 years later, I basically said, well, I'm going to the U.S. to see what's over there. And so I literally got hooked on it. I had a great passion for it, but didn't really think the NBA was my goal at that point. Probably not until I was in college. I thought, second year in college, I go, well, if I continue on this path, I can probably play in the NBA. So it took a while. It was kind of step by step.
So you guys make it to the NBA. And whether that was your dream or not, you're there, you're competing. I mean, you're playing with guys. I mentioned Patrick Ewing with you, Chris. I'm sure you played against them, but guys like Peyton and Sean Kemp, and one of my favorite players of all time, Chris, you played with Drazen Petrovic, who tragically passed away real early. But tell us about the NBA a little bit, and what you found most enjoyable about playing in the league.
Well, to stay the same order, I'll lead off. I came in as wasn't guaranteed to make it. I was a later draft pick, fourth round. They had 4 rounds back there. So it was a long shot to make it. And I made the team, and then was able to kind of find my niche, which you mentioned earlier, which was defense, rebounding, blocking shots, doing all the dirty work, that sort of thing. And found that I was going to be able to stick. And with the diabetes, I wasn't super upfront about that. At that time, that was a big question mark. Could you play in the NBA with having diabetes? And I didn't really become outspoken about my diabetes till probably about my third year, when I played in all 82 games, started in games, and played minutes, and showed that wasn't going to be an issue. As far as being in the NBA, and I think what really, obviously, as Det said, we both love the game, absolutely have a passion for the game, but then it's the competition. It's being able to play night in, night out against the best in the world. Every night there was somebody you were facing, whether, as you said, Patrick Ewing, Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, Karl Malone, David Robinson, just on and on. Hakeem Olajuwon. Every night you're battling somebody, and so I think it's that competitiveness. And then the camaraderie. There's nothing like being on a team, and you form those friendships, and you go into battle every night with those guys. And to me, it was a dream.
It is amazing. You throw out, these names, and, for people that don't follow basketball, but I mean, these are all top 50 players ever in basketball. The names that you just throw out, and you're banging up against them every night. I know back then the NBA was a lot, I'm going to say dirtier, but a lot rougher. Players could get away with more. Detlef was out running around the perimeter as we were down there banging away.
That was tough. That was tough. Don't be fooled.
No, I know he mixed it up, but he got to face the basket sometimes. And so it's amazing again that 16 years that you play in a league with all that pounding away, it wears off. It wears on you a little bit. What would you find most enjoyable about playing the NBA?
Well, first of all, like I told you, I was addicted at an early age, and it's the best game in the world. If I could still play, I would play every day today, because to me, it's just one of those things that I truly enjoyed. Every day was different. Every game was different. Every practice was different. Every move was different. When you have that passion for it, I think everything comes easy, but it is a challenge. I was I was obviously at got drafted high first round. I was an All-American in college, and I went to a pretty good team that had all-stars playing in my position. And the backups ended up being all-stars later on. Like the small forward position was Mark Aguirre, was averaging like 26 points a game. And his backup was Dale Ellis, who finally got traded, and then he averaged 26 points a game for the Sonics.
Great shooter. Yeah,
it was really hard to check your ego, because I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm an All-American. I'm going to come in and play. And then it took me a little, 3 years to kind of break through, and eventually I had that success. But going through the ups and downs of the NBA life or even just a game, hitting that game winner or missing the game winner is not something you can duplicate in regular life. And I think just that emotion of it, and celebrating with your teammates, and sitting in a locker room, and losing a playoff game, and you're down as can be, but it's stuff that you can't really do anywhere else. And those moments were special. And talking about now, like you mentioned, Gary Payton, sitting around now, when I go to Vegas, we go have dinner, and he's still talking crap, and it's hilarious. Right? It's the stuff you always remember.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think there might be a headline in the German national newspaper tomorrow that says Det Schrempf says basketball is the greatest sport in the world. So there could be some footballers out there that you might get a phone call from. So just beware. But yeah, I mean, people don't realize. I can't remember how many games there were a season. Was it about 80 or so? 82. So, I mean, think about that. We all perform in our jobs every day, day in and day out. We talk to prospects, we talk to clients, but gearing up and being your best just about every night, or it's every other night, is got to be a difficult thing to do. And like you said, both of you guys were superstars in high school and college, and you get to the pros and you're playing alongside people that are backup scoring 26 points a game. I mean, it's the talent there at the next level is amazing. How challenging was it to accept different roles and to play within that team framework? And I'll start with you first, Det.
Oh, yeah, like I said earlier, it was challenging at the beginning. I had a pretty bad attitude about it. As Chris can probably say and tell you, I did have a little bit of a temper. And it worked for me because I just kept fighting through it. But eventually I did break through, and played a lot, started, and had a stretch of many years where I played a lot and made the All-Star team. But when you get older, you also realize it's not all about that. It's about coming together as a team, winning. And I know Chris played on a couple bad teams where if you lose every night, it's horrible. And when you win every night, even if you think you should be doing more, it's a great feeling. And that's the difference between the good teams and the very mediocre teams in the NBA.
Right. What was your experience, Chris?
Well, similar in that, I guess, coming out of college, senior year, I don't know, average 19, whatever. But then you come to the NBA, quickly realize you're not going to be the focal point. When I went to Cleveland, and you've got Brad Daugherty, Larry Nance, and Mark Price, they're going to get Ron Harper, they're going to get the shots. And, I got great advice early on when I was trying during the summer. I was preparing to go to the NBA. Lorenzo Romar, who I'm sure you know from UW, he played in the NBA for a number of years. And he just said, be great at something. And that was so true. And I quickly realized that for me to best help my team, I needed to do what I was best at. And for me, that was rebounding and playing D, blocking shots. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed rebounding. I took a lot of pleasure in it, a lot of pride in it. And so I think I was able to accept that role. And you quickly realize, as Det said, the difference between winning and losing is fun, great experience versus miserable. And I wanted to do whatever would help my team win. And at the end of the day, it is about winning, and it makes all the difference in the world. There's nothing, I would really say, with one team where I just, the best feeling in the world, and it might have been when you went to the finals, Det, but when the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And that happened with that Knicks team in '99, where we just were clicking. Everybody accepted the role. Everybody did what they were supposed to do. We were locked down defensively. We were able to, anyway, it was a great team, great experience, made a run to the finals. And that is the best feeling in the world. I was on a New Jersey team, and I was fortunate. I think I made the playoffs 14 or 15 years out of the 16. But the one year I was on New Jersey was just a miserable year. And I remember walking on the team bus, and one of the players said, "Well, we got 73 days to go." No, he said 73 days, 36, 12 hours, 36, it was just that miserable, where people were wanted to get out of there so bad. And it's just, and winning makes all the difference. And so you quickly realize, if I can do this to help our team win, that's a great thing.
Well, I love Romar's advice. Be good at something, and not everybody can be the top scorer. Not everybody, even I'm sure you see the same characteristics in your business today. Not everybody can be the person that brings in the business, that manages the business, that is the best service person. Everyone's got to play a role, and they got to be good at it in order to succeed. And just as winning in sports was very enjoyable, winning in business has got to have around the same feeling, I would guess. As you experience that every day with your colleagues. Let's talk a little bit about how you guys went from the MBA, long careers in the MBA, to wealth management, and why wealth management versus other directions you could have gone. Det, why don't you start off and tell us a little bit about how you kind of came into this industry?
Yeah, it took me a while. At the end of my career, first of all, I never really thought much about anything else but basketball for probably my first 10 years. It was just getting ready for the next season. Then you have a couple minor injuries. You're starting to get a little older. You're sitting in the stands, watching your kids play any type of sport, and your friends and neighbors are talking to you saying, "Oh, so what are you going to do next? I mean, you're getting a little old." And I'm going, "Wait a minute, I'm not that old, But I was fortunate, we live in a great community. We live in this bubble up here in Seattle, and my neighbors are, or were Microsoft executives, Starbucks, Boeing people, and you're sitting in the bleachers with your watching your kids, or you're having barbecues, and you just kind of brainstorm about, what do you want to do? And I had not thought much about it until probably in my mid 30s. And then I kind of go, okay, I got to figure out something else, because I'm going to have another 30 years of, doing something. I'm sure not going to sit at home. My wife doesn't want me sitting at home. I can't sit at home and showing that as an example to my kids. So I've done a lot of real estate investing. So I actually joined first while I was still playing a couple of real estate boards, just to try to understand it. Always read books, guys were playing cards or doing whatever. I read a lot of books on the planes, the buses. And then when I got started, I was still playing for Portland my last year, and I helped raise a venture fund, became kind of that network guy, getting a foot in the door, raising money, creating opportunities. And I really enjoyed that. So I actually got started in venture, and did that for about 8 years, and then got recruited out of that for wealth management by a firm that literally, our main office was basically 300 yards next to the house we lived in. Wow. So I go by there and I grab a coffee or I have a lunch meeting, and there would be Kevin saying, "Hey, Det." I go, "Hey, Kevin, you should come in and we should talk. You should work for us." So I got recruited. I didn't know anything about wealth management, and about a year later, I joined up.
Yeah, it's amazing. Kevin, the person that you're mentioning, the guy I worked with 30 years ago, is also 6'8". So there's some brotherhood going on here between all of us, I think, is what's happening. Chris, how'd you come into wealth management? You actually work with a good friend of mine and a person I worked with about 25 years ago, and Gerald Graves, a great guy. I don't know if he had any part in you getting into wealth management, but why don't you tell us your story?
So when I was in college, I went to Yale, economics, poli-sci major. if MBA didn't work out, I was looking to go to Wall Street. So I had an interest in college, and followed it. And as Dad said, I did play in the card games, but I also read the book. I do both, until they got too rich.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I always knew I wanted to go on that. Either I was going to go stay in basketball, or go into the financial services. And I ended up obviously going to financial services. And as soon as I retired, I got my CFP because I wanted to make sure I wanted to be hands-on, do it myself. And I thought it was important while having a degree in economics, but also have the background, the certificate to kind of back it up. So not only can, as Dad says, you have those contacts, you have those networks that can get you in any room, but also you want to be able to show that, now that you're in the room, what do you have to say? And so I was also influenced by, I saw so many bad stories along the way, like that. All the athletes, everybody gets pitched everything. And you saw so many bad cases, saw so many of my and Dad's contemporaries who end up going bankrupt or losing a lot of money and getting bad advice. And you realize there's such a value for good advice out there. And so I followed on that path, retired in Portland, got my CFP. And that's when I decided I wanted to look at where I was going to, where to work with. That's when I got introduced to Gerald through a mutual friend. And we hit it off, shared the same philosophies, client first, holistic approach, really getting to know the client, and went from there. And I've worked with Gerald since then. I think I started with him in 2005.
So that's great, Chris. I appreciate you telling me that. You know what, I go back to what I was talking about earlier in the introduction, is that, people have come from different professions into our industry and been wildly successful. Det, what do you think it was that, Kevin and some of the partners over there at Coldstream saw in you? Because you didn't have that wealth management experience, but they saw something in you that you could bring to the table. What do you think that was?
Well, one, I think it was brand. I have a pretty good brand in the Northwest, and Coldstream, when I joined, we were an $800 million company. And, when I first started, and I didn't really know much about the business, but I would tell people, hey, I'm with Coldstream. They go, what? Cold cream, cold stone, what, because there was a branding issue, and they realized that, I could really help with branding and help get our name across, different networks. And obviously I had a great network, from not just neighbors, but from all the charity work I did for 25 years.
Right.
I had great sponsors. I had great connections. I was working with major companies from, Microsoft to F5 networks, you name it. And so, I was playing with, Steve Ballmer, CEO of Microsoft, playing golf with him, stuff like this. So I had a great network, and that obviously helps. But for me, it was just they wanted someone to be part of the company that can obviously help grow the company, but also brought a pretty good brand to the table.
So speaking of that, I know, Chris, I'm sure you've got a great network of relationships and contacts as well. Through your career, your basketball career, but also through the philanthropic work that you're doing. How do you best use and leverage that network without abusing it? Because I know that's a balance that you have to strike sometimes. If you're sitting there you're on the 8th hole with Steve Ballmer, you don't want to just say, hey, Steve, who's managed your money, by the way? Or maybe you did, Det. I don't know. But Chris, why don't you start out? I mean, how do you not abuse that network that you've built over the years?
Well, I think it's just, if they're friends, by the idea you're helping them. And so I've always, if I'm going to bring it up with somebody, I'm going to take it from the point I'm trying to help. And if you want that help, great. If you don't, that's fine too. But I'm at least point you in the right direction, whether you work with me or work with somebody else. I want to at least give you advice so you're doing it the right way. And so I think it's pretty easy if you have it from that perspective, where you're not going to them to get something from them. You're actually going to them to give them something.
Right.
And if you have that attitude, then it's not a hard conversation, especially if you really, it's like, no pressure. If you want to work, great. Well, either way, but here's, and I think, when you ask about Det's successful, in my opinion, because of his network, but also because he has a reputation caring about people and doing his homework and those sort of things. And the same thing, if you come from a good place of really wanting to help people in their situation, help them in life, it's an easy conversation.
I think that's a difference maker with you guys. Honestly, there's plenty of former athletes out there that have big networks and they know a lot of people, but they're not necessarily seen as someone that can be helpful and has that personality and that kind of foundation to want to help somebody. And especially as you mentioned earlier, in professional sports. I mean, I know a lot of advisors out there would love to manage the money of a professional athlete, especially with the contracts these days. But I also know there's some things that go on with a professional athlete that might make that a difficult client. What would you say to advisors out there who are prospecting, professional athletes, and is that a good client or not? Dad, why don't you start off?
Well, I think they can definitely be good clients. It is a little bit of a same and similar approach to a business person because they're like their own CEO of their business. But to me, it's like, what we do is kind of like a reflection of charitable work in my ways. It's, what I enjoyed doing over the years is, contributing to the community, helping people out in need. Now we're a little bit of a different stage with people that maybe have a different need. They don't, they're not financially insecure, or they're not homeless, but we have the chance to help them, reach those goals so they can have a positive impact on their community. And that's why I always try to talk to pro athletes about, or coaches about, what's ultimately your goals. I mean, is it all about, how your brand is doing on social media, on Instagram, and how much money you're making? Or is it, what are your long-term plans for you, your family, and your kids? And that oftentimes gets pushed in the back because, as we all gone through stages in life where first it was all about succeeding. Hey, I got to make it. As a player, I got to make it. I get more playing time. I get more shots. I got to get a new contract, and I got to buy the bigger house. I got to get a bigger car. And I think, Chris and I are at a stage in life where, we've done some of that and we don't really have that pressure. So, we're not pushy with people. And I work with some pro athletes and I'm never pushy. I'm kind of going, hey, here to help, but it's got to come from you. I definitely don't want to work through the layers of agents and hanger-oners and family members that don't have the best interest in mind. So it's always a discussion, but a lot, as Chris knows, the agents, they got a pretty good grip on the athlete. So oftentimes it depends on, is the agent a good person or not? And is that person actually, wants to do what's best for the athlete?
Chris, what are your thoughts on managing or if you were talking to an advisor right now about approaching a professional athlete?
Well, I mean, I think it's a great, I love the clients I have that are pro athletes or were pro athletes. I love it's a great situation. You can do so much. Athletes really need it more, well, as much or more than anyone, in that there is no other career like it, that of a professional athlete, where a professional athlete's going to earn, a lot of times you could say up to 95% of their lifetime earnings are they're going to have those by the time they retire, but mid 30s if they're lucky. Late 20s is probably more likely. And they get all that money on the front end and have to be able to live off that for the rest of their life. Where more common is people make money as they get older and rise up through their company, and they've already had those lessons along the way. Unfortunately for athletes, sometimes those lessons can be devastating. If what you do in the early 20s and lose that money, you can never recoup it. So it's so valuable, and it's a pleasure. I've really enjoyed working with them. As far as getting into the business, it can be brutal, because now that the money's gone up, everybody's chasing them, and I get. I would talk about my best friend was my agent, and he's unfortunately passed away. But we would talk about it. And when it got where money firms were recruiting kids out of high school, giving them money in high school to join them when they came in. And that was something I never, it's like, I'm not getting involved with that.
Right.
And it's that said, you need to work with somebody who has a good agent, who's really got his athlete's best interests in mind. But as for someone who comes in and doesn't have any connection, it can be very tough, unfortunately, a brutal business where it's not always as ethical as it should be. I found, and I'm sure Deb say the same thing, that the athletes usually when they've gone through a couple of lessons and they realize that guy who was giving them money in high school or giving them money in college probably wasn't the best person for them, and now they're looking for some advice. That's usually the client that's more ready to accept the advice and take advantage of the advice.
Yeah.
But it can be tough. I mean, because everybody said, "Oh yeah, I want to work with all these." It's just like being an agent in the world. It's a tough business.
Yeah, and it probably not just managing wealth, but helping them save their wealth, right? And because they 18-year-olds getting $20 million contracts, they're not accustomed to that wealth. There's a lot of influences that all of a sudden come out of the woodwork. And as a wealth advisor, you're not just dealing with the athlete, you're dealing with all those influences as well. But you guys are in the business of really changing lives. I mean, I know all the advisors I've worked with in my career can point back to situations where they've taken a family or an individual from nothing and built up wealth, and now they're enjoying retirement, and that's deep satisfaction. But can you guys give me an example of a feel-good moment where you guys went home and just fist bumped your wife or your kids, and where you said you made a difference in a client's life? Chris, why don't you start out?
I think there's a couple examples. I think one with professional athlete was one where after he retired, he's got 4 kids. We kind of went through the meeting. They're all set. They've 529 plans, fully loaded, set for college. They've paid off their home. They've got a second, they're set for life. And he just thanked me, and his wife thanked me and just said, "Thank you for setting us up." And it just feels good. It felt good to get recognized and to really have, and this was not a player who was at the top level. Maybe he was a good player, played for a number of years, but to know they set him up where he was going to be able to take care of his family for the rest of his life. That was that felt real good. And I think I did talk to my wife. I don't know if I fist bumped her, but I definitely told her how that's the reward of being in the business.
Well, high fives were more fashionable in our days than a fist bump. We didn't know what that was back then. Now we're not fist bumping or high fiving with COVID. But so Det, I know you've probably had some great experiences, but can you share one?
Yeah, I think there are many, right? I don't think I can compare them to that big moment playing basketball, right? Where you get so excited emotionally, but it's more, it lasts longer because, we're all human beings. We all, like Chris said, we all appreciate a pat on the back. So it's that message you get when somebody, a family, a client, a couple, gives you that, what, this feels really good. We feel safe. We feel, stress is gone. And that's ultimately what we do, right? We're trying to make sure people live a happy, fulfilling life and they're healthy. And it's not always about the dollar amount. But yeah, we just recently had clients to a couple that actually we just signed on, and they're all on board, right? I mean, they literally brought in every document they could over a weekend. They uploaded everything they had, in which, as you know, sometimes that can take months, right? Wait a minute, you still have your so-and-so. Can you get that to us? Oh yeah, tomorrow. Literally over a weekend, everything they had, from all their retirement plans to stock option plans, to insurance documents, to an old estate plan that needed to be, everything. And it was like, and then on Monday they're going, okay, what are we doing now? We're going, And then, we had a meeting set up all week. They were going to, they're in Aruba now. They literally left. They're going to spend 3 months in Aruba because all the kids out of the house and they're working from there. And they were ready to go. And so we had meetings set up all week long with, planner, estate planner, tax planning, stock option planning, all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the week, they sent a long email going, here we are sitting in the sunset, and we were really worried about if we should leave, if we can. And just starting this plan makes us feel so good, right? And then, again, you like a pat on the back. And so you're doing the right thing. And those things I think that's why we're all in the business.
That's just got to feel amazing. I mean, no matter where you are when you get that email, it's just got to feel so satisfying to know that you've made that difference. And I know a lot of our listeners, come across that all the time, but it's you never can get enough of that, I guess is what I'm saying. What do you guys think about the future of the advice industry? I mean, are you challenged by some of the things you see out there with some of these robos and Betterment and Robinhood? I mean, do you think there's still going to be people who want our advice 10 years from now and want to sit across from us and listen to somebody versus get advice over some sort of digital means? It's
a good point, especially, we live in a market that's very heavy in tech. So, everyone is kind of talking about that, or Robinhood just opening a big office here in the Seattle area. So definitely we hear that. I don't think you can compare the services, and when the markets are going well, and people are saying, hey, my 401k is invested in index strategies and it's doing really well, why would I pay someone to do that? But when the market is, has some hiccups and is struggling, and then all of a sudden the people that said they didn't need advice, that come because they're freaking out, going, I'm down 25%, what did I do? So with us, it's that comprehensive approach. Who's managing all these other components: your estate planning, tax planning, risk planning, and figuring out how you're going to live your life and what do you want to do on the philanthropic side. And I don't think you can ever replace that with some app on your phone.
I agree, but I'm biased. And if you can accomplish it in the heart of Microsoft and all the technology providers up there, that you and Coldstream are doing a pretty good job. Chris, what are your thoughts?
It's just to echo what Dat said. I think the advice, especially the holistic advice across the board, will always be valuable. And coordinating the estate plan to tax preparation to the investments, just lining up and really sitting down with the client. And what are your goals in life? What are your objectives? Why do you have this money? What are you trying to accomplish with it? And then mapping out why it is that you're invested in what you're invested in. And then it's when the client understands that, listen, the money that I have in the stock market isn't for next year. It's for 10, 15, 20 years from now. Then the fact that the market went down is not that big a deal if they understand that. And that's the to me, that's a big part of it's the returns, but it's also we all want the best returns possible, but it's really the making sure that the client's invested in the right things to achieve those goals. And once they do that, once they realize that their benchmark isn't necessarily the S&P or whatever, it's are you on track to achieve your goals? Can you sleep at night? To me, a client's doing well when he no longer is watching CNBC and calling up if the market's down, and it's just like, no, I've got this. I'm set. And
hey, should I buy some GameStop?
I've been saying that, exactly. So I think in the GameStop, the Robinhood, and that's fine. And I think I'll talk to clients. Hey, I don't mind if let's put some money on the side. If you want to do something, we can do some things and have some fun with. But just understand that's different than what we're setting you up for long term. But anyway.
Well, you mentioned two words: holistic and long term. When I think of Robinhood or think about people that invest in GameStop, no, those two words definitely don't come to mind. But certainly in financial advice, that's what we do. We provide holistic advice. It's for the long term. And I personally don't. I think I agree with you guys. Our business is not going to be threatened by these things anytime in the near future. I want to get to my last question. I'm going to come back to basketball again. You guys are picking the ultimate team, players from your era or today's pros. Who are your starting five? And importantly, who gets the ball for the last second shot? So, Chris, I'm going to start out with you.
Oh, wow. So all time, my era or today's era?
All time. You can pick whoever you want, it doesn't matter.
Wow. Michael. Leading off with Michael. LeBron. Center's a little tougher. Shaq or Akeem. Probably go Akeem, actually. Point guard, probably go Magic. Got to have Bird in there. I could go on and on, but
that's a pretty amazing team there. So Who gets the last shot on that team? I mean, I think Bird and Jordan would argue for this one, but who
they would argue? That's a tough call. That's a good choice to have. To me, I still who's the best, greatest. I still go with Michael.
Yeah.
So I'd probably give it to him. Anyway.
Yeah, Magic would just say he would want to pass it to whoever that person is.
Yes.
What about you, Det?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I started playing when Bird was still playing, when Jabbar was still playing, at the end of their careers. And I left when Kobe started out and LeBron was coming in. So, it's hard to compare different eras, but I tell you, I take a Shaquille O'Neal in shape, which wasn't very often, but I take Shaquille O'Neal in shape over anybody in the world. When he wanted to, nobody could guard him. Bird, obviously, incredible. You got to put LeBron in there because he's, in the talk of, is he a GOAT or whatever that discussion is nowadays. Everyone is a GOAT. Right. Jordan for sure. Point guard, yeah, I love Magic. I would have loved to play with Magic. Just run the lane and get it right in your numbers. Who would take the last shot? Oh boy, I think I would bring Damian Lillard off the bench and let him shoot from anywhere. He's deadly.
Hey, he's certainly made some big shots in his career, and you also have the Northwest bias going there, I think, with Damon. So I get it. I can't believe there's no shout out for your German brother there, Dirk Nowitzki, but maybe he won't be listening to this podcast. I don't know.
He's hanging out in Sweden.
Well, hey guys, you definitely held my attention today. I think you held our listeners as well. I'm grateful you took the time to be on my podcast. Certainly best of luck to both of you. Keep making a difference in people's lives, whether they're athletes or not. Certainly in your communities with your philanthropic endeavors, you should be commended on that. Stay safe, stay happy, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you,
Derek.
And thank you all for listening today. You can subscribe to the Can You Hold My Attention podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, and Stitcher, as well as through our LinkedIn page with the same name. Have a great day and stay safe, everyone.